Let's bring in South Carolina GOP Senator Tim Scott to react to this. I know you're in Washington, Senator Scott.
Yes,
what is your reaction? Did you see all of this happening yesterday?
You know, I paid attention to the news reports, but without any question, chaos and lawlessness has to be dealt with significant force, period. You know that the most vulnerable communities in a world that is chaotic are the ones that are most targeted. So those folks who believe that whatever they're doing leads to a positive outcome, it is ridiculous. It is wrong and it is illegal. And the president's comments about having stiff terms should send shivers down the spine of these agitators. They're not a part of any protest. They're simply agitators and trying to find a way to create anarchy, chaos, and lawlessness. That is dangerous for every single person in this nation, especially the most vulnerable communities we have.
So yesterday, the president was talking about he's extremely concerned today and yesterday about the statues and the tearing down of those statues. But when people, African Americans like yourself, see presidents that had slaves, are you torn, Senator Tim Scott, on whether they should have statues?
I'm not actually personally. I think we could have a robust debate about how to deal with the renaming of some military bases. There's some things that we can have a serious debate about. But this desire to purge all of history because it was ugly or negative really does not serve the American people well. I go right back to the Selma Bridge, which is actually called the Edmund Pettus Bridge, because we preserved the reality of how vicious people can be by keeping it named the Pettus Bridge. That's why it was so important to see President Obama and President Bush standing together in unity underneath that bridge to reinforce the fact that in America, all things are possible. In America, we may have flaws, we may have challenges, but we get it together and we come together to overcome those challenges. And that's why I think oftentimes preserving the history, as ugly as it may have been, can be a sign and a symbol of how good it can be. And if we want to do something, why don't you put up a statue to Booker T. Washington? Why don't you have a conversation about Washington Carver? These would be positive steps. Tearing down history for the sake of anarchy is not how we make progress in this country. It never has been, and it never will be, because we are the United States of America.
Right.
We are indeed.
In fact, here's what the president said about this very topic yesterday.
So how do we grow as a country, but yet not forget our past?
So you have to understand history, and you have to understand the culture and so many other aspects of our country. And people can study that and they can hate it, and let's all hate it. But you can't take down George Washington's statue, and half of our country is named after Washington. You can't. We have to remember the heritage, the culture of our country.
And he is for adding statues and monuments, too,
yes.
And like Booker T. Washington.
Well, if you think about it, for me, remembering our history is really important. Me celebrating all of our history would be crazy. I'm not going to celebrate all of our history because all of it shouldn't be celebrated, but we should remember it. It is a fantastic landmark for us to realize that progress has been made, progress needs to be made, and it only happens when we work together. That's why the president's comments were somber, measured, and consistent with history. We have to understand and appreciate, frankly, embrace remembering the tragedies brought upon man by other men and how men came together. People fought their brothers and sisters in the Civil War, literal brothers and sisters, blood brothers and sisters, for an oppressed, voiceless people to be heard, to be seen, and to be free. So when that kind of carnage is a part of our history, that's ugly too. But we should celebrate the fact that we will go to whatever length necessary to preserve this nation. And the president, Congress, Democrats, Republicans, black and white, we should come together and realize that there is an element, a minority element in this country that doesn't want progress. They want anarchy. They don't want us to be unified. They want us to be lawless.
You know, there's that element of anarchy, Senator, in the CHOP zone or the Chaz zone, as we've been reporting over the last couple of weeks in Seattle. Yesterday, after 3 people were shot this weekend, the mayor said, you know what, it's probably time to pull the plug. Watch.
The gun violence unfolding at night is not only wrong, it also is undermining and distracting from the message for change that we are hearing in the street and in so many of the peaceful protests. We are working with community to bring this to an end. Capitol Hill belongs to everyone in this city. SPD will be returning to the East Precinct. We will do it peacefully and in the near future. But it is clear, while the physical space is important, we are going to focus our greatest efforts on reimagining policing itself.
Okay, so what they're going to do, Senator, is they're going to slowly phase out that and ask people to please leave at 8 o'clock at night because they had the trouble. But ultimately what has happened, and Seattle's finally figuring this out, is that activists hijacked what was initially peaceful protests about police brutality and other things, and now it has become this.
Yes. Well, there's no doubt that this is no longer about George Floyd, and that's exactly where it started, and it's where we should be. We can't conflate the two issues together. What the mayor said was fascinating from my perspective. She said that lawlessness has finally reached a point where they must act. The fastest way to keep lawlessness from reaching the point where you must act is to snuff it out at the beginning. We should not allow the people in Seattle to conflate positive protesting with agitating. It's 2 different issues. They're not even in the same universe. And what we saw in that autonomous zone was lawlessness. The fact that she allowed it to metastasize, and now we're having to bring more people in. She could have finished that the day after it started. It is really important for us to recognize, whether it's Washington, D.C., Charleston, South Carolina, or Seattle, Washington, we cannot have autonomous zones that are not a part of the United States of America. We have to be a country driven by order, structure, and discipline. That is the only country where human flourishing at its highest potential is even possible.
Yep. All right, Senator, let's talk about the Justice Act. I know you're spearheading this. What's going to happen this week with that, and will it pass?
Well, I don't know that it will pass, Ainsley. I will say this. I have been hearing from the leadership on my friends and senators on the Democrat side say that their leaders do not want them to sign on for even a motion to proceed. It appears to me that if they follow their leadership, we will not have any discussion on the bill at all because they believe that police reform is a better election year issue than police reform is an issue to be solved for the vulnerable communities that started this entire discussion.
But Senator,
I think that is as close to demon as possible.
Why not work with Democrats and see if there's something you could put in there to get to 60 votes?
Oh, listen, we're willing to do so, but in order to start that conversation, we have to first get the motion to proceed, which is simply a vote that says, let's get on the bill so that we can see what you want from your side, compare it to our side, and have some amendments to make it better. I'm open to an amendment process that improves the bill, as long as we don't demonize police officers along the way. So I'm open to a discussion about improving the police reform objectives within the bill. And if we do that, then we'll have a robust debate on the underlying premise of the legislation. Without doing that, we're only having political talking points.
Well, you know, Senator, a lot of people looking in are going to be disappointed because over the last couple of weeks, it sounded like Washington, D.C. wanted to do something. But now that you've suggested that the Democrats that you've spoken to want it as an election year issue so that they can say, you know, we are for law enforcement and we are for much more than the Republicans are. You know, nothing's going to get done before. And then the question is anything going to get done after the election?
Well, Steve, they're drinking the Kool-Aid on we're going to have this sea change come November. I think they're wrong, number one. But number two, let me ask you this question, Steve. I hear and I read in the House bill that they want more information so they can direct training in the right direction. That's the foundation of our bill. They say they want more training around de-escalation. That's in our bill. They say they want to have the chokehold banned or reduced except for the life of the officer. That's in our bill. They say they want a duty to intervene and studying the use of force. Those are in our bill. They say they want us to look at recruiting more officers to reflect the diversity and the demographics in their city. That's in our bill. They say they want to have more information on best practices. That's in our bill. They say they want to talk about mental health experts. That's what the president's executive order says on co-responders. It's in our bill. Drug addiction, in our bill. Homelessness, in our bill. Their priorities, fortunately and unfortunately for them, matches pretty well with the president's priorities, and those two matches really well with my priorities and the Senate priorities on the Republican side. So now we're having to ask a political question. If you get 2/3 of what you want out of the gate, why would you change the rules and change the goalposts? They said chokehold was the litmus test, but we had already put it in our bill. So they changed the goalposts. They do that because it seems like they're more interested in campaigns than they are the vulnerable communities they say they serve. And when you feel like you own that vote, you quit working hard for those people.
Senator, thank you so much for joining us.